Welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to discuss the major differences between the East and the West, not just in their philosophical beliefs, but also in how the East and the West became the East and the West. And before we get into this, I just wanted to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you for everybody who watched my latest video, which I talked a little bit about spiritual psychosis. In fact, that was probably my least liked video that I've put out in the last number of weeks. But what was good about it is I saw that there was a good readjustment of subscribers. I think that it probably did exactly what I wanted it to do, which was push some of the people who I was not really looking to educate. I've been doing this for many, many, many years, and I've had a lot of wonderful people. Almost everybody that's watching this video, you're included in this. So many people who have helped me along the way, so many people who have given me wonderful bits of information, breadcrumbs down the rabbit holes and everything. But there is a small group, it's a minority, but I don't want it to be a majority in the spiritual community, which is not dead set on expanding their knowledge, they really are just like overinflating their own egos and, hurting other people, right? They ask for freebies. They are these masters, chosen ones of manifestation, but they're dead broke. And I have nothing against those people. It's just that it's basically time to shit or get off the pot in terms of spirituality. We really need to start culminating and putting things together. The negative forces that kind of run the world and want to establish and utilize these philosophical branches for control, they are ramping up behind the scenes. So it's not like I'm not trying to put fear out there or anything like that. We need to get a little bit more practical. So if that means I've got to lose about 20 subscribers or something like that because people, think I'm talking directly to them and they take it personally, that's totally fine. I love every single one of you. It was not meant for offense. If you haven't seen that video, please do watch it. It's really imperative that we understand the practicality, the psychology, the deep theosophical beliefs. I almost said theosophy there. I definitely don't mean that. But you have to know what theosophy is if you're going to see through the veil on a lot of how these higher powers have utilized this wisdom against us, guys. And my goal is to help assist with that. And if you're going to be here and you're going to be peddling nonsense and trying to get free stuff out of people, and I mean, it goes much deeper than the video really said. So I just want to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart for being here. I love each and every one of you, no matter who you are. But the time to be serious about this is now. So share this video, share all of my other videos, comment, like, get the algorithm running. I cannot express the amount of gratitude I have for each and every one of you. But if I'm being really frank, we need to grow the fuck up a little bit. Okay, so with that out of the way, I'm going to watch my cursing and everything else today. I'm going to be really back to my normal self. It's just, I got to stand up for you guys. So the reason I make those videos, that one in particular, is because I got to stand up for you who's watching at home. All right, I love you. I want us to move forward in humanity and in society as a progressive, not political, a progressive spiritual movement. Again, not the political stuff, left or right leaning. I don't care. It's not about that. That's a football game to me. Left versus right politics. That's all a football game to me. I don't care about any of that shit. It's not important. It really isn't. We need to be more solidified in the way that we are seeing the world, which is why I'm going to make this video today. And we're going to talk about the East and the West. So what do I mean by that? Let's get into it. Eastern mysticism and Western mysticism. These are two separate branches that are basically the same side to, it's two different sides of the same coin, so to speak, all right? The way that our world has culminated, right, is that we have all these branching theories. All of them are good. Probably all of them have semblances of truth. You have creationism, evolution, all of these have probably little tiny partial truths in them. Why do I say that? Because I can't remember which philosopher, I think it was probably Socrates or Aristotle or whoever it was, said that the majority of the public is often wrong. So if you are in line with the vast majority of the public, then you're probably wrong. And of course, I'm not taking that quote verbatim. I'm butchering it. But the whole point of the philosophy is that human collective unconscious is very easily malleable. It's very easily manipulated. And the energetic forces that be, they do everything they can to kind of inculcate us into whatever kind of cult like mentality they want to promote and peddle. So, my philosophy is that you've got to study everything. If you're a Christian and you consider yourself a Christian, not like maybe a lot of you watching are probably not the type that go to church. If you are, great. If you got a great church, awesome. But most people today are like, I don't consider myself a Christian. I'm more spiritual, which is great. Cool. We're breaking away from the demiurgical conglomerate system of, go to church and do this and that and be a fake Christian and blah, 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 right? But there are really good churches out there at the end of the day. Point being, as we break away from these societal conditioning organizations and whatnot, the politics, the religious institutions that don't take themselves seriously and don't do the hard, heavy work like we're all doing here, right? As we break away from those systems, things start to become more enlightening, I guess you could say. So here's a map of the world. Why do I have a map of the world? Because I want to talk about East versus West. The major theories of where we started as human beings, they generally tend to say it was around this area, maybe the very middle area of the world, right? Ultimately, though, that has actually little to do with how we've gotten this world map. And let's throw flat Earth, round Earth, triangle Earth, donut, toroidal, holographic, inner Earth, whatever, society of real, whatever. I know all this stuff. Let's throw all that away. If I buy a plane ticket, I can go to any of these places that is on this map. Well, almost, there's Antarctica and there's other stuff. But you get what I'm saying. If you have the money and you have the funds and the resources, you can go and travel to any of these places. So at the very least, we know that there is some semblance of truth to this map. Okay, they wouldn't be able to fake it for the billions of people that have flown over on flights for the last, 50, 60, 70 years, okay? It would be way too hard to fake that. Could it be easy to fake, trajectories and what shape the Earth is and blah, blah, sure, whatever. But my point is, we know these countries exist, all right? So let's take the tinfoil hats off just a little bit. I want us to look at this more pragmatically. Okay, so let's study this, right? Let's really get into the depths of this. I'm not going to go through the entire historical narrative, but as you guys already know, there was a lot of Eastern philosophies that had grown, most of which actually grew faster and more substantiated than the West. The Western philosophies, like the ones from the Middle East, the ones from Europe, they're a lot more new. All right, like you have Islam, for example, very new. It's a baby religion compared to other religions like Judaism or Babylonian, Chaldean mysticism. Europeans, right? Paganism is probably one of the older ones that exist from the European area. That has to do with what's generally called the Indo-Aryan peoples, and that's not the same as maybe it's the same as the Aryan race that Hitler talked about, but I don't think it is. It's the Indo-Aryan peoples were this group. It's this mix of a hodgepodge. They were mostly, I think they were mostly like Middle Eastern, Caucasian, African groups that basically traveled on horseback, and they educated a lot of people back when we were still evolving in these areas, right? And of course, you've got Atlantis, and you've got all these old ancient ways that people saw things, and a lot of people have the philosophies that we were really, really advanced, and then maybe the flood or other things happened, and then we became a lot less advanced. Whatever the case might be. We know from a lot of the real accurate, cool historical data, not like the kind of fake BS stuff, that a lot of this stuff that was going on in here was a lot of intermingling. Okay, so the East, though, China, the Korean areas, a little bit of Russia, India was a big proponent. These areas were developing, astrology, mysticism, inner alchemy, right? Like they were developing a lot of these things. They had all these borders with the mountainous regions and zones that kind of kept themselves, what would be the word, estranged, right? You had the Silk Road. and the Silk Road was really, really important. But outside of the Silk Road, there was really not a lot of conversations happening between the East and the West for a very long period of time. And there's reasons for that. It has to do with frequency because the East and the West are on different frequencies. Now, the East, and here's a really cool, I mean, it's probably not decidingly accurate, but this is a really cool kind of way to see the East versus West motifs. Now, here's the other thing too. This is definitely not to scale, right? Like the Africa's huge compared to uh, the North American continent, right? Like Africa's massive. Okay, so this is not. I don't know if any of these maps are really to scale. Just throwing that out there, and I'm well aware of that. But this is a good indication. Now, why does it cut off here, right? We're going to get into that in a little bit, but it has to do with the prime meridian that was established in the 1800s. I have notes here, so I'll be reading through those notes. But here's some facts. East and West has to really deal with the direction of the sun. Okay, so really fun fact for you. This is a speculative theory that is based in Egyptian historical foundational rooting, but it's like how we shake our heads up and down for yes, and we shake our heads side to side for no. Well, yes is like Yeshua. Yes is a word that has to very loosely etymologically linked to what other cultures, other words that cultures would call the sun. So the yes is like you like looking up at the sun when it's at its peak overhead, or even like bowing and worshiping the sun. Whereas no has to do with moon, because you can watch as the sun goes across and then the darkness sets in, so you're going no back and forth like this. And this is cross cultural. A lot of cultures do, even just a head nod for yes, or like the Japanese bow forward, right? They don't like bow side to side. And in fact, one of the only cultures in the entire world that does something different with their head would be the Indian cultures, which oftentimes will bob their heads back and forth like this. And that's when they speak. Right, like there's a lot that has to do with like affirmation when they do that. So really cool, but they're one of the only cultures that does that. Many other culture, and forgive me if I'm missing some. You can feel free to drop comments down below. Talk to me about what you think. I actually really like this picture, so I am gonna save it as a thumbnail. But the East versus West question, so to speak, is really like the whole reason why we are in the situations that we are in today. Okay, so this is called the Middle East for a reason. It's not the Middle West, right? Like, and that's because, again, of that prime meridian. And we're going to talk about that a little bit further because that's more new, okay? But this idea of East versus West existed far before that conference held in the 1800s, which I'm going to talk about later. So where does this really all come from? And again, it's the fact that the sun rises in the East and sets in the West. Okay, so the sun rises from the right-hand side. A lot of the times, like in the Bible or other mystical scriptures, they'll talk about, the right hand being the right path. And even in our language, in the English language, we say right versus left, right? And right is normally right, like it's correct, it's proper, all this other kind of terminology and lingo. And left is like the left-hand path or the left-hand side, which is often like the lesser, and even politically, when you take a look at the politics loosely, in America or any other part of the Western world, the right side, the more like conservative side of the politics, has to deal with like finances and pulling the money from the bottom up, up into the richer classes to, establish a higher luxury, higher quality. Whereas the left-hand side has to do with the lower people, which has to do with like the poor, the hungry, the homeless, and things, and helping the meek and the mild. It's basically like the way that they loosely kind of translate it, right? And even here they put red on the right hand and blue on the left hand side. But really, at the end of the day, let me tell you what a lot of this is really about on a deeper scale, because I'm starting with the basics to kind of walk you through my philosophy on the inner depths of these. The East versus the West. This is kind of a decent philosophical, little thing here that we got. I'll zoom in for you. Eastern mysticism is about how we are kind of part of this unity, right? Like we are, it's very divinely spiritual. So you study like Tantra, Nadon, Kundalini, all these other systems. It's very deeply divinely spiritual, and it's all about how we are deeply integrated and connected with each other, how we're all part of one massive ecosystem, and it's very unified. It's very together. It's all about togetherness, which is why a lot of Eastern related countries focus on the importance of family. And even in like the middle tier, I guess you could say, like in the European areas and stuff like that, it is still focused very much on family and stuff. But as you get more to the West, there's more separation that is involved. It is more about like humanity striving towards its own perfection, whether or not God is with you. Basically, that's kind of the more of the deeper philosophy. They are much more spiritual in the East. They're much more religious in the West. That's like a really great way of saying it. You know, spiritualism is more of like a philosophy of life, whereas religion is more about a dogmatic approach to living. Okay, so it's like one is like within life, and one is trying to create a system for life. And furthermore, it's exemplified within our bodies. Take the diaphragm as the intermediary. Take the diaphragm, I guess, as your prime meridian, which, by the way, let me show you what that even means. Prime meridian has to deal with where they drew the middle line. It's, you know, exactly like this picture here. You know, you can see it right there. So the prime meridian is what was determined. Let me see what the conference was called. The International Meridian Conference in 1884 in Washington, D.C. Okay, so this was, you know, a conference that was held here in Washington, D.C., right, which determined that the prime meridian was going to be Greenwich, England, because they felt like that was the middle of the world. And that mostly had to do with, like, trade, okay? However, they weren't too far off, because really the middle of the world really is like this area right here. I would say the Middle East, specifically like the Israeli area, is the what is proposed to be the dead center of the world, right? And their maps were a little less accurate than our maps today. Maybe, you know, as you can see, this is not to scale. I would assume this is not to scale again, because, you know, they're constantly updating the maps here. But let's assume that your diaphragm is that prime meridian point. Well, the upper portion would be the east, and the lower portion would be the west. The East is focused on intelligence. They're focused on information, data gathering, technology, right? But they're a little bit detached from what it means to live, so to speak. There's a lot of things in their culture. And of course, you gotta take like the last 20 years and how our cultures have all evolved as a caveat. I'm not talking about how, you know, South Korea and Japan have been very westernized in 2025, you know, comparatively speaking. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about for thousands of years. Because once the internet came about, it was basically the internet was like our nervous system was finally fully integrated, right? I want you to kind of use your imagination here. The internet, which is this way that we send light packets of information through the like the electromagnetosphere of the Earth, which has its own electromagnetic frequency. That's how that's not even like a weird conspiracy thing. That's science. That's how it works. There's already energy in the air. We manipulate that energy through Wi-Fi, radio, cell phone signals, 5G, all that. We are manipulating the energy field of the Earth to send little packets of data and information, and it goes to where it's supposed to go because it's from one source to another source. Very similar to how the neurons and the system in your body works. So the East versus West idea, it really could be symbolically adopted to the body. You've got the upper portion, which a lot of Asiatic countries are very focused on intelligence. That's a huge thing for them. Intelligence, and not so much on the focus of like the emotion or like, you know, choosing to live your life. You're not really going to see a lot of the, you know, the degenerate class in like Japan and South Korea. They have them, like Yakuza style, like, kids. But they really look down upon. Whereas in the West, it's almost promoted to be a rebel, right? And that's because below the belt, below the diaphragmatic area, it's very much focused on, work ethic, sexual orientation and sex, gut instinct, right? That's like gambling. That's like a lot of the lower entities. But you need your legs to walk. And here's another big secret if you understand zodiac energy. The Everybody always talks about Aries being the top of the head and how it's the start of the zodiac. In reality, Aquarius and Pisces are the mother and the father of the zodiac. They are the two least born signs out of any other signs, along with Capricorn. And so those three signs of the winter months, they are the foundational pillar of what allows you to move your Merkaba, your chariot. Without the knees and below, you can't move. And movement is how the universe sees you, not just physical movement, but like your actions and what you do. So from the knees below, okay, these are your two, Jacqueline and Boaz, your pillars of foundation. The feet are sideways because that's the Piscean aspect. It's the connection of all things. It's below us, right? It's like as above, so below. We look up into the sky to see the universe. The universe is ruled by Aquarius and Pisces, especially Pisces, right? So really you are like a walking universe. God's like feet are essentially the stars that we see in the sky. It's all interconnected. So and that's like kind of a nice analogy just to kind of think about it. But again, we're made in the image of God. That's kind of the whole divine mission. So the foundation right here is super important. This is the foundation of energy. Without your calves are like a segregated lower heart. Right, it's like your heart is it's multiple parts, right? But let's assume that the heart is two parts, right? The left and the right aspects to it. It's like both of your calves combined make a heart. So you need your calves to push blood flow upwards in order for your entire body to stay well maintained. And without, the entirety of the whole, life becomes a lot more difficult. It doesn't mean that it's impossible to live. Your body's great at adapting, but it becomes very, very difficult. You lose a leg, you lose a limb, you lose an organ, right? Like that's a huge adjustment that you have to make in your life. So keep all this as a symbolical metaphor, but the West is about the physical action, all right? Sports, UFC fighting, football, right? Like what do they play in Europe? They play football, right? They play soccer. That's what we would call it that's what we would call it here. But they also play cricket and like all those other games too, right? It's very physically rooted. And then you also have parts of Africa which are very physically rooted. The African men and women very much in their bodies. It's like a big part of their philosophy as well when you study their cultures. So and then you can see here the circulation of blood and how it works as like a toroidal pump. Right, so it's all spinning inward towards the center, which would be the heart. But you've got all these other parts that are just as important too. And remember, this is a system. So no one country is better than the other because we all bring something to the table. But keeping these philosophies in mind, I want you to understand that this is how, if you were to map it to the body, this is also how spirituality progressed. The East was much more fixated on unity, higher levels of consciousness, inner wisdom, and they are the ones who really influenced the West. But the West is a lot more in the depths of it. They're a lot more critical. They're a lot more substantiated. Plus, the West rules all the areas of where we're born from. We're not born from the mouth. We're not born from the heart. We're born from the gut and the genital area of the body as human beings. So this is more about what it means to live. Whereas I would say this is what it means. The West is more about what it means to live and exist, whereas the East is more about what it means to like progress and be unified. That's why so many people are obsessed with like Japanese and South Korean and Chinese cultures right now, because they're seeing, we all know that all these countries fake their money. Okay, let's just be honest. The Federal Reserve, all of these systems, it's all fake. However, the ways that these countries have I'm an American. I live in America, and I live in a very nice part. But you can drive through most of America. It's not as pretty or nice as it really felt like when I was a kid. And all these Asiatic countries are developing and advancing. These Middle Eastern countries are Dubai. They're developing so fast. They are outperforming the West because it's an ebb and flow of energy. The West has had the energy for a really long time, and now the East is taking it back. But that's how your body works too. And it's all cyclical. Lunar cycles, solar cycles, it's all cyclical. So the East might be gaining the advantage, but eventually the way that the energy works, the West is going to overtake it, and then the East is going to overtake it, and it's just going to go back and forth, probably in perpetuity forever, because that's how your body thrives, right? That's how this exists. So it's maybe possible that the East has had so much money and inflow and advancement, and depending on how the West responds, they could try to take that energy back, because the West is really dying. It's failing right now. Western philosophy is dying. It's so much more rooted in, I would say, lesser things, right? Like the East is like, yeah, you need a family. Like, yeah, you need to focus on that. But now they're choosing not to partake in those because of what they're seeing from the West. So you've got these movements in Japan and South Korea that are like, we're not going to have kids, we're not going to have families anymore, and they're really mimicking the West. But the West is miserable, comparatively speaking. The East can at least live, and they can thrive. It might be a little bit more unemotional, more maybe not as glamorous. They have a lot of shiny stuff right now, but it's not as glamorous as this lifestyle that they pretend to have over in the Western world. But the West, the lower sphere is built upon fabrications, similar to the demiurge and how it's a mimicry of the creator. The gut brain, separated by the pleroma of the diaphragm. The gut brain sits there in the celiac plexus, pretending to be a brain. It is a brain. It does control the lower body. It does control the root of your emotions that then go up into the brain, and the brain has to logistically and logically separate the emotion from what needs to be done in action, right? But that lower brain is really like the ruler of the body, and the brain is the ruler of all, but the brain also is segregated by the neck. So it's very much so like a spiritual conundrum here. And you have like, in the East, you have like these extremely spiritual holy temples, and you do, I guess, have those in the West, but not really. Like you got the Himalayas, the Tibetan mountains, Nepal. You've got all these areas in China. The monks that go live up high in the mountains. Whereas the West, you got pastors. You've got rabbis. It's not the same. It's just not the same. And it's not the same outlook either. And this is another good way of putting it. The East is really focused on that inner world development, whereas the West is focused on the outer world development. But both are necessary. And let me be clear. One is not really better than the other. It's more like they have to be balanced properly. So there's a lot that you can learn. Now let's get into a little bit of this prime meridian here and why we even have these systems at play. So when global geography began being mapped during the classical and medieval eras, this is all ChatGPT. The center of the world was assumed to be around the Mediterranean. Okay, ancient Greeks and all the people who were going out physically, right? They were going out, they were exploring. They were, I would say, maybe more brave. You have a lot more stories of bravery happening in Europe and maybe these the Western world here. Not that the East isn't brave. It's just that they're much more. Again, they're like, even though they're very spiritual, they're also very logical. It's almost like there's a segregation here. And I would say too, it's not half and half. I would say it's more split into threes. Because you have three brains, and that heart center is like very important. So I would say this is the West, this is the East, and this is the mid part right here where everything kind of mixes together like the heart. And that's a compass. The heart is a vortexual compass that generates your biofield. So keeping all this in mind, and yes, all of these are spherical Earth models. Yes, because like, what else am I going to find? If you Google it, that's just what you're going to get, right? But let's take a look at the map. Now, the map shows us clear as day that this is how they segregated. And in fact, this is how they do time zones. The Japanese is the land of the rising sun for a reason. It's because this is where the sun rises every single day. And Alaska, the western part of California and the United States and Mexico and all this, Canada, this is where the day technically ends, right? So since that conference that was held in 1884, not 1984, 1884. So we're talking like over 100 years. This has been deeply rooted. There's not a single person alive that remembers what the world would look like before this. So this is something that we all just adopt and accept. But here's the reality. Technically, any of this could be the East or the West. If you go off of the standard scientific model that the Earth is a ball, okay, let's just play hypotheticals. And I'm not saying that I don't believe that the Earth is round. I'm just saying let's go off of the standard scientific hypotheticals. There's a lot of people who believe that the Earth is flat now, or toroidal or holographic or whatever. But just play with me here, okay? I'm not here to talk about that because I don't know, and let's be honest, neither do you. So until we figure that out fully and we can get like the absolute, real, I don't know, the footage wouldn't even be enough because it's never going to be enough to substantiate people. This is, again, I can get in an airplane and I can fly anywhere in the world. So I know that this map, to some degree, has accuracy. It has validity, right? Regardless of the shape. Now, here's the key point. You've got this big line in the middle, and any of this could be East or West. This was decided over 100 years ago because of trade routes. Okay, so this wasn't necessarily the middle. In fact, this is probably more so the middle, based off of like the real true accuracy of the geographic model that we have based off of how big the continents actually are, and also to the fact that Jesus Christ existed as a human being, and he was born here in the midsection of the world, right? So, it could really be anything, but at the end of the day, this is just the model that they choose to propose because it is something that is deeply rooted in that Western, conglomerate takeover of the world, right? And now again, body over mind. That's like what the West did, right? This was when we have this map here. Okay, yes, there were Vikings and there were Greeks and there were other people who traveled to these other countries, and there was already people in the South Americas and in Mexico. There was Native Americans here. Yeah, all that's true. However, when the explorers, who were not just white guys, by the way, they were a bunch of different races, African peoples, Jewish peoples owned a lot of the ships that came over here. There was a lot of people from these areas, including Asians. They had a lot more to travel, but they still were doing it. And they came over, and this was like I want you to think of it as like a puberty of the earth, right? We were all over here. We were all living in this section of the body, just like children do. But then we had a flux of people who moved downward into that genital region, and the world expanded. Manifest destiny occurred, right? A slaughtering, a genocide happened for like the native peoples, and it was a world reset. Because in my mind, it was similar to a puberty moment. And I'm going to get into the deeper mysticism here. The official story is that this prime meridian was created for trade routes. That's not necessarily true. This prime meridian was created as a Freemasonic way to substantiate their occult system. I'm going to showcase that to you today. Now, there's a lot of different systems here. This was shared by one of our good friends in our Discord group, and I've seen this for years. I've studied these maps. This map, I don't know exactly where this specific map comes from, but I'll tell you. If I can't tell where something comes from, if there's no source to it, I don't trust it. I'm just going to be completely honest. This is nice. This is cool. This has to do with the ley lines of the earth. That's all true. But where does this little system come from? Right? Here we go. Robert Kuhn, 1967, copyright down here. Okay. I don't know who that is. The Rainbow Serpent Trilogy.com. Or Solstice Yoga, or whatever, solsticeyoga.co.uk. All right, cool. All of these are very similar, but they're also very different. They don't agree on all the different points. And then they'll show you the body, and they'll show you how the energy maps in the system. This is too chaotic. This is too sporadic. This isn't a real marked, this is not a real marked system. Let me show you a much more accurate model, and I'm going to back it up with facts. This is the trademarked Psycosmos cosmobiological theory. Okay, so I do have this trademarked. You cannot steal. Okay, this is just a common map of the Earth. All right, we have Japan and Australia, the Aboriginal peoples, and Mount Fuji acting as a pineal gland of sorts. You can see how the shape of the islands here kind of forms a crown. It kind of forms like a round circle here based off of what we know about the current map model. All right, and you can even see that. Let me close some of these. You can even see that here. Okay, it kind of rounds out here. This is your Aries crown. Okay, in my view. All right, let me move this over and let me close tabs. Where is it? There we go. So in my view, all right, this creates a human body. Okay, so let me explain and walk you through very quickly what this is. And if you want to learn more about this, you can go and study my, you can come join my school. I actually walk you through this entire thing. I talk about the 12 tribes and the 12 groups of people, etc. This, to me, is much more of an accurate model. Aries, you have the samurai class, the war leading class, Mount Fuji acting as the pineal gland of the world, huge energy receptacle for Mount Fuji. South Korea and North Korea, anterior and superior pituitary glands. Everything that happens in South Korea also gets cascaded to the rest of the world. All right, so you've got Aries and Taurus, the cerebrum and the cerebellum. The Chinese and the Russian people, very stubborn people, okay, just like the bull. India has some of the, in Nepal and these countries all in here, Pakistan, they have some of the most, the biggest amount of languages ever. They're also very good with technology, okay? And then here in the middle, right where Egypt kind of connects all four elements right here, right, would be the dead center. And it's very close to that prime meridian point, and it's also very close to the Middle East, right? Israel, which by the way, the whole Western world, including London, they and you know the Europeans, they believe that Israel is the dead center of the world. I'm just letting you know that it's a Freemasonic idea because of Jesus Christ. They believe that Israel is the middle. But this whole area is not actually as segregated as these other areas here. Like I mentioned, this is more of the middle point. So you might notice that it goes Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and then, you know, Libra, Virgo, Cancer, Leo. Actually, all four of these energies swirl together. That's why I put it like this, is to remind myself and to remind other people. These four energies are swirled together. Where do you have lions? Right here in Africa, the heartland of the world, right? Where do you have you know, an obsession with like the food and the details and all that other stuff? You've got it here in the Middle East. You've got the Caucasus Mountains, that would be Cancer, you know, energy, a lot of it. And then Libra over here as well would be like the legals, the logistics, Hammurabi's code. All of these four energies here bleed into each other, just like how Cancer's the spleen and the stomach, Libra's the kidneys, Leo's the heart, and Virgo's the bowels, right? It's the solar plexus. All four of these areas of your body are heavily connected. In history, all four of these areas were heavily connected, right? Even more so than these, right? These were obviously a lot more segregated. And then over here in the Western world, Scorpio would rule the East Coast of the United States. Sagittarius would rule the West Coast, which is why they look very different, right? One's a desert. In fact, all of the red areas are deserts, basically, like Australia, the West Coast of the United States, and a lot of Africa. Okay, these are the biggest, huge deserts, you know, desert areas, including like parts of the Middle East as well. Capricorn would be South America, right? A lot of human sacrifice and stuff that went on there. Okay, and then Aquarius would rule the poles, and Pisces would rule the waters and all of the island nations. All right, so if you actually, you know, figure it out, you'll see that this actually does substantiate these 12 tribes, these 12 root groups of people, root races of people, and it actually folds and fits together very, very nicely. And all of these qualities of these zodiacal energies map very, very well. So again, you cannot steal this information. You cannot copy this without giving me credit. You cannot do any of that stuff. I have I've showed this to Gnostic Pope, Divine Mind 369, The Giver, Ziggy Astrology. I've walked a lot of people through this methodology, and they all agree that this makes a lot more sense than a lot of the other woo-woo mystical kind of, no, you know, I guess, what am I looking for? No source material kind of uh, uh, groups of thinking, I guess I'll say. And it's not an attack on those. It's cool. This also works with the ley lines, by the way. So here are the ley lines, a lot of these ley lines that are mapped out. This is just one system, but this is a system that is often very much accepted, right? And you've got all these interlaying parts, and I actually mapped that system perfectly over the ley lines as well. I wonder if I have that picture here, but if not, that's okay. And you're probably able to read a lot of this stuff, but it makes a human being at the end of the day, guys. It makes a woman, Mother Earth, with the head being over here. I mean, it's not perfect, as you can see. Like her head, her head should be laying like over here, but her head, her arms, her midsection here, her genitals, her butt, her knees, right, her shins and her back, which are ruled by Aquarius. The spine and the legs are ruled by Aquarius specifically, along with Leo rules parts of the spine as well, and then the feet off in Pisces. This is the human body mapped onto a system, and it's a beautiful system, and I'm giving you guys this one for free because I love you guys. So again, don't forget that I love you guys a lot, and I'm giving you guys like a lot of secrets for free here on the channel. So if you enjoy this video, you gotta come support me. You gotta come come help me out. Come give the props and the kudos. I'm here for it, and I'm trying to build myself up here. I'm trying to help as many people as I can. And it is a tough world out there. I got to be honest. It's a tough world. Everybody's having a somewhat of a difficult time kind of adjusting. We've got a lot of like really not so good geopolitical and financial things that are going on right now. But let me tell you how you can support me, okay? Number one, first and foremost, you can come join my online university. We got 56 people in here now. We're growing. Everybody's loving it. I do weekly astrology forecasts, not predictions, but forecasting to help people, all right? And I also do weekly Q&A calls where you can come in, you can join, you can talk. We got a lot of people having good conversation in here. It's great. The other thing that you can do is you can come and check out my AI tool, Astraya.ai. All right, and this is an AI tool that I built that is basically like an AI heart. There's a section where you can read all about it up here at the top. It's called Info. You go to the website, you can read all about exactly what it does. It is a advanced AI system, and there was some bugs I had to fix over the weekend, but it should be working now fully. And there's two different models you can get, all right? And just to showcase it to you real quick, the first model is going to come with the lower tier model and the higher tier both come with this daily planner. So it's going to give you a walkthrough of the astrology for the day, tell you your do's and don'ts. And then you can ask it about the day, or you can ask it about any topics that you're interested in. Additionally, there is on the higher tiers, there is a full scope astrology breakdown, which gives you tons of wonderful information, as well as giving you your own daily personalized forecast, which gives you all the information that you're going to need to understand what's going on in your day to day. Additionally, if none of that interests you, at the very least, for the lowest tier, you can still get your Sacred Secretion Calculator, which is going to tell you all of your inner alchemical systems and processes to help you through that entire process. So I really would love to see more activity and more of you guys in the school and also using the app. Please go check them out. They are awesome, and a lot of people have been signing up for it. It really helps me out, guys. Even if it's just for 1 month and you want to come check it out, I've got a free 7-day trial on the school. Come check it out. Come test it. See what you like. See what you think about it. And I love you guys. Seriously, you guys are amazing, wonderful people. And again, had to make that last video kind of churn a little bit the people that were coming in. I was getting a lot of very negative, weird comments, and I'm sorry if that video kind of came off a little standoffish, but I had to because when you have people with overinflated egos that might be going through spiritual psychosis, I got to protect you guys. They're going to be dropping comments down below, giving you guys a bunch of nonsense, and we got to stay on the middle path. Everything's about the balance. Okay, so try to stay as balanced as you can. Try to stay really positive this week. I know it's going to be a really interesting week with the Grand Water Trine. If you're trying to take advantage of that information, try the Astraya tool. Try my school where I give the astrology breakdowns. Either way, I love you guys, and I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you in tomorrow's video, and we'll be discussing other topics. So love you guys, and I'll see you guys very soon. Take care.